Have you ever met someone who never seems to get angry? No outbursts, no raised voices, no visible frustration, just calm, always calm, even when they have every reason to explode. You might think they're just peaceful people, mature, emotionally stable, but here's what most people don't realize. That constant calm might not be strength. It might be something much more complex hiding beneath the surface, and understanding it reveals one of the most misunderstood psychological patterns in human behavior. Some people never express anger because they were taught early on that anger is dangerous. Imagine growing up in a home where any show of frustration was met with punishment, rejection, or worse. Maybe a parent who exploded at the slightest provocation. Maybe a household where expressing anger meant losing love or safety. Over time, the child's brain learns a simple survival rule. Anger equals danger, so they suppress it. Not consciously at first, but automatically. Psychologists call this emotional suppression, and it doesn't just disappear when you grow up. It becomes wired into how you respond to conflict for the rest of your life. These people aren't choosing calm, they're protecting themselves from a threat that doesn't even exist anymore. Then there's another group, the ones who never express anger because they've convinced themselves they don't feel it at all. This is deeper than suppression. This is what psychologists call emotional dissociation. Their brain has learned to disconnect from anger so completely that they genuinely believe they're not angry, but the body remembers. The tension shows up in other ways: chronic headaches, stomach problems, fatigue that never goes away, anxiety that seems to come from nowhere. Their anger didn't disappear, it just went underground, eating away at them quietly while they smile on the surface. And here's where it gets really interesting. Some people who never show anger aren't suppressing anything. They've just developed what researchers call hypercontrol. They feel the anger, they know it's there, but they've built such a strong internal system of control that expressing it feels like losing, like admitting weakness. For them, anger is something other people do, people who can't manage themselves, people who aren't disciplined enough. So they keep it locked down tight, believing that control equals maturity. But control isn't the same as processing. An unprocessed anger doesn't just sit there peacefully, it builds. There's also a fourth type, the people pleasers, the ones who never express anger because they're terrified of conflict, not because they were punished for it, but because their entire sense of worth is tied to being liked. Studies show that people with anxious attachment styles often suppress anger to avoid rejection. Their brain tells them a simple story: if I get angry, people will leave. If I stay calm, I stay safe. So they swallow every frustration, every boundary violation, every moment where they should speak up, and they smile, they agree, they accommodate, until one day something small happens and they break. Not because that moment was so terrible, but because years of suppressed anger finally found a crack. But here's what makes this psychology so dangerous. Anger isn't the enemy. Anger is information. It tells you when a boundary has been crossed, when something unfair is happening, when you need to protect yourself or stand up for what matters. People who never express anger aren't just avoiding conflict, they're ignoring the signal their body is trying to send them. And over time, that silence costs them. It costs them relationships because people never know where they stand. It costs them opportunities because they never advocate for themselves. It costs them health because the body keeps the score even when the mind refuses to acknowledge it. And there's something almost tragic about watching someone who never gets angry finally reach their limit. Because when they do break, it's not measured, it's not healthy anger that communicates and resolves, it's an explosion, years of stuffed down frustration pouring out all at once, and then they feel ashamed. They feel like they proved everyone right, that anger is bad, that they should have kept it buried, so they lock it down even tighter next time. The cycle continues. Now here's what most people miss. The ability to express anger healthily is actually a sign of emotional maturity. Not the screaming kind, not the destructive kind, but the kind that says, "This isn't okay, and I need you to understand why." The kind that sets boundaries without apologizing for having them. The kind that protects your peace without needing to destroy someone else's.
People who never express anger haven't mastered their emotions, they've just mastered hiding them, and there's a massive difference between the two. So if you recognize yourself in this, here's what you need to know. You don't have to explode to be heard, but you do have to speak. You don't have to rage to matter, but you do have to acknowledge what you feel, because anger isn't your enemy, silence is. The kind of silence that convinces you that keeping the peace is more important than keeping yourself whole. The real question isn't whether you express anger, it's whether you've given yourself permission to feel it in the first place, because until you do, you're not calm, you're just quietly breaking, and no one, not even you, deserves that. If this made you see anger differently, hit subscribe. We explore the psychology that actually explains how people work.